Hey, all good Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I'm joined by Richard Sparks, the writer of New Rock, New Roll, and its sequel, New Rock, New Realm. How are you doing today, Richard?
I'm doing very well, Frank. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we have two books out here, and we have more on the way. Can you introduce us to the fantasy world of New Rock, New Roll?
Yes, it grew out of my love of gaming,
Mhm.
online gaming specifically, and I was just galloping around with a bunch of scoundrels in a sword and sorcery world. Everyone's in your ears, and there are 24 of you on a group or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And we were going off to set an ambush for some other scoundrels. And I just thought, what would it really be like to be that guy, this battle mage with a magic staff in a real world, not in the game, but in
Yeah.
a real world? And there was only one way to find out, and that was to write it. So I did, and the first book flew out. It just, it took 2 months to write a 450-page book, which is
Oh goodness.
absolutely, it's like being bottled up all my life. The second book took 5 months, the next took a year, the next one a year and a quarter. But at least I've completed the series, and now I'm on to sequels, and I think I'm going to try and write some short stories with some of the characters, humorous short stories, because there's a lot of fun and comic moments in the adventures. Adventures have a lot in common with comedy, and if I think
Yeah.
if you miss out the trick of making people laugh, you are you're not fulfilling what you could possibly do because look what Hitchcock did. He makes people laugh and then scares them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the three heroes. There's a narrator who's based on someone like me, who's a retired English school teacher,
Hmm.
and his two best mates. One is an Australian, and his avatar is an orc, and the third is an Asian American girl, and she's the DPS
Mm.
damage, and she's a dual wielding sword dancer. And the three of them just happen to be really good, and they win the world championship of online sword and sorcery. And
Yeah.
the next thing they're shooting down rabbit holes, and everything's going nuts.
Yeah.
And the hero finds himself standing in a field in the middle of nowhere with a crappy sword, and what the hell is going on? And he's being chased by wolves. So
Yes.
everything gets worse, and he doesn't even know if there's magic in this world. And he's immediately captured and hauled off to be, so things are going to get worse, and he doesn't know where the other two are.
Yeah.
And of course, when he meets Grell's kind of slightly surprised to be an actual orc rather
Right.
than,
Different look.
yeah, it is. But my orcs they're different from Tolkien's. I mean, they're
Yeah.
salt of the earth types. They love nothing more than a good scrap and a good booze up afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, they're great. I like them.
Yeah.
And the characters revealed themselves to me as as I went through the world of my heroes, and the story just came naturally. And then I realized it's by no means over. I've got a whole world out there. So
Oh yeah.
the next book takes you to another realm and another series of adventures, and the third does the same with the third book.
It feels like the way you're expressing these books is the same way you would as you're playing the game as well, in that you're introduced to this world oftentimes in a starter zone, something real, and
Yeah,
then it doesn't take long before you start pushing those boundaries and see where it pushes back, and your characters are doing the same thing, and now you've reached one set of boundaries, but there's a new expansion or a new continent to go to, and
absolutely. Yeah, you
you have
clear
to keep
one
exploring.
map, when
Yeah,
in a game you clear one map. But again, I stress to people, they're not in the game. It's all explained at the end of book one why this
yeah,
happened. And oh my God, the adventures are only just starting.
yeah.
So there they are for real, as their avatars that they created, now for real. And yeah, so it's really an opportunity to have a lot more adventures. And I've got my editor staying with us at the moment. She lives the other side of America
Hmm.
in North Carolina. She's here. We're working on the developmental edit of book three. New Rock, New, what's that called? New Rock, New Rules? New Rock, New Rules.
Yeah,
Coming out on, I think the party's going to be on Halloween itself.
that's gonna be fun. Hopefully, people dress like orcs and stuff like that for it.
Well, it's going to be at the World Fantasy Convention in Brighton in
So they
England.
will be.
So there should be a lot of loonies there. I love those conventions. People
That's good.
just letting rip and having fun.
When you're creating these characters and you're putting them in a real world, but they have this kind of video game background, do you find yourself leaning towards the video game player, or are they starting to mold and meld into being the fantasy characters that they play online?
Yeah, they're really the fantasy characters that they play online. I refer as little as possible to real life because our hero, his avatar is called Dax. He's the only one we know about in real life. The others who they've
Mhm.
got this rule: no questions, no answers.
Yeah.
They don't say who they were. They don't say anything about themselves. And we never find out because I don't want to get into that trap of splitting
Right.
your characters into one or two. They're all extremely happy to be there doing what they do because they love us a lot more interesting than their boring old real lives pushing pushing a mouse around.
Yeah.
Uh, and the thing about gaming, it's great, especially if you're not a heroic young battle mage, is you can do it from the comfort of your own computer and in your own room.
Yeah.
But to do that for real would be, once you got used to it, would be quite an adventure.
Quite an adventure. I mean, we go for escapism. We escape the humdrum life into these fantasy worlds, and to be able to have it in real life and, with some protection would be nice, but as a battle mage, you'd get it
Yeah.
quickly.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's all what ifs, isn't it? What
Yeah.
would it be really like if that? And of course, and then you use the conventions of storytelling,
Hmm.
whereas in a game you'd use game conventions. But this is, we've come out of a game into real life, but we're using the conventions of gaming. For example, training sequence quite near the beginning.
Yeah.
Our hero and he's bumped into Grell, his orc mate, by then, and the two of them are sold into the army to be recruits. And Grell's completely useless. He's a complete wimp
Yeah.
until by the end of training, he's the most fearsome thing you've ever seen with a battle axe. And he's good. And they
Yeah.
pick up the fourth leg on the stool before they meet their DPS girl,
Hmm.
Krista. She's off. They don't know where she is for a long time.
Yeah.
And they pick up a fourth guy, Ola, who's a thief, who's deadly with his knives. And the four of them are just, a kick-ass team.
Yeah. You're starting to hear these themes that I think go across video games and go across fantasy stories as well, is friendship, exploration, identity. How do you try to interpret those into your stories?
Well, friendship is obviously a big theme of the stories because they rely on each other. They find out more and more about each other, but not going beyond the characters that they now are.
Yeah.
We don't break that magic fourth wall, as it were.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, adventures, mysteries. One of the things that I love to do in these, and in the third book, it was actually quite tough on the writing process, is come up with like mysteries and puzzles.
Yeah.
When you get into a game, there's some strange um, verse or poem or something that tells you something, and you've got to work it out. Now, in a game, you can just Google it if you're getting annoyed and you can't figure it out. You can't do
Correct.
that in a book.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could eventually, but you just have to trust that the writer's going to take you along on the armchair ride,
Hmm.
because it's the writer's job to do all the work, not the reader's. The reader's job is to get value for his money that he's coughed up for the book. If you've paid for the book, you deserve to be put on an armchair ride and given a good adventure.
And enjoy the
So
adventure.
yeah, so you're using some of the conventions of gaming, but really it's just an excuse to go off and have great adventures.
Yeah, and just get lost in the adventure in the fantasy
Yeah.
world. I like the idea of the puzzles. I play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and I'm the dungeon master. And so you get stuck for a puzzle, you just open up J.R.R. Tolkien, and you find when anytime Smeagol talks in the cave, there's some good puzzles and they're good riddles that are like it'll stump somebody good. So
Yeah, and I love it in book three, the one that we're just doing the developmental edit, which is basically just the polish.
hmm.
Um, there's a bit, I think it's chapter nine,
Hmm.
when there's a meeting between various people to say, what are we going to do about this? And then somebody who's a sort of slightly mystic, academic figure from a college just suddenly starts speaking and is obviously in some kind of trance.
Yeah.
And one of the people says, "Well, there's your answer. You've been told." This mystic verse comes out, just simple lines like
Yeah.
"run and hide, hide and run," and it goes on like that for like 16 lines, I think.
Hmm.
And you look at them and you think, "Well, I can see what it says, but what does it mean?"
Yeah.
And the person who knows this says, "Well, that's for you to find out. There's your answer. You got to figure out what it means."
You gotta figure out the
So
question.
they've got to go off in all different directions to figure out the quests and get back together before the shit hits the fan. And
Yeah.
and of course, not really much of a spoiler alert, but at the end of book two, our hero's got a bit of a problem that he needs to fix,
Yeah.
or yeah, he needs to fix it, and there seems to be no fix for it. So
Hmm.
he's got to try and fix that while working out this detailed, this mysterious verse they've been given, while somebody else goes off to another land. And I love that whole sense of juggling balls in the air. And when you're reading it, you go, okay, yeah, okay. I can see what it says. What does it mean? Yeah, all right. So we go there and then what? And so, you're sort of foreshadowing the end, but it doesn't make any sense until you see
Yeah.
that it does. And then
Yeah. Oftentimes as the reader, you're getting a bigger picture than the character, but it feels like in these type of adventure stories, you're in it with them and you're discovering it on the same page as they are. And I love
absolutely.
that. I love the
You've got to be
unfolding
on,
mystery.
you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you want to find out what happens. The type of books I like are the ones where you can't wait to see what happens, but you
Hmm.
don't want the book to end because you're
Yeah.
enjoying it so much. This is so good. I don't want it ever to end. I can't wait to see what happens. And then people are, coming back and saying, God, I was so relieved to see there's a sequel and
Yeah.
there's four in the series. Oh, great. Because they had a good time reading the first one or the first two.
Right.
So that's really nice feedback. But that's exactly what I like when I read a book or a series.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start to get those last few chapters, you're like, oh no, I just love this
No,
world
it's
so
going
much. I
to
don't want to leave
end.
it. Yeah.
No, I just want to be. I mean, remember when I was like a teenager, I was working on the farm near where I lived in England, the west of England,
Hmm.
and my friend was staying with us. We were both working on the farm for like nothing a day, but it was, pocket money.
Yeah.
And we both reading Lord of the Rings at night. And we
Oh,
just sort of
wonderful.
say, this has to be real. It can't be somebody must have funneled it to him. I
Yeah.
mean, it can't not be real. It can't be a story. So,
Yeah.
because we so wanted that world to exist. It was so gorgeous.
And when it penetrates your mind like that, the next day when you are on the farm and you're seeing these rolling hills, you start to kind of almost imagine you're out there next to Rohan and stuff like that, and you
Very,
start to see through the eyes of Tolkien when you're out there.
well, I mean, it's the west of England, Gloucestershire, where I was brought up. I think
Mm.
Tolkien was just one county over. I think it's Worcester or
Whatever.
Hereford
Mm.
somewhere. And my other connection to Tolkien, weird one, is that I went to the same college at Oxford University as he did.
Amazing.
He was a little before my time,
A little bit.
but it was fun to go. They go, oh wow, Tolkien was here. He didn't. He taught at another college later. He became an academic of Anglo-Saxon,
Hmm.
which is Old English, it's technically called,
Yeah.
which is where he got his love of all those elvish languages and things.
Yeah.
And he's a very great scholar.
Oh, it's amazing just to hear his works and the way he writes like a history teacher who's trying to translate old works to you makes it feel even more real too. And that's what's really nice about good fantasy is it feels like it's just on the other side of this page if I can
Yeah,
get to it,
yeah.
you
Yes,
know.
exactly. I read a really interesting thing the other day about Tolkien. I think by this time he was a dean at Pembroke College, a tutor.
Hmm.
They call them dons at Oxford. And two girls wrote to him, I think it was sisters or cousins, who wrote to him and said, "When's the next book coming out, mate? We love The Hobbit. Are you writing another one?" And The Hobbit came out in the early 30s, I think, mid
Yeah.
30s. And this was about 1941 or two from memory.
Yeah.
And he wrote back a little letter saying, "Well, thank you for your nice letter. And um, yes, I am writing another book. It's a bit bigger than the other one, and it's about Bilbo's nephew Frodo and Gollum's ring that he found. And that's all I can tell you at the moment. Uh, I haven't been able to write a single word this year because I've been very busy." And you go, wow. If a master like Tolkien
Yeah.
can have his downtime and his off years, I don't know whether it's anything, but he had a lot of work to do, obviously. But
Yeah.
whether it's some kind of reader's block or he needed to just breathe and let the stories come to him. But that's really interesting because I plowed through the first book.
Hmm.
The second was a little slower, and then the third and the fourth took a long time. And then since then, I've been rather spinning my wheels doing follow-ups to it. But I've sold the film rights, so there's a
Oh yeah.
possibility that we'll turn it into either a film or a TV show. Depends on what the producers want. Which is, that's all pie in the sky until it happens. If you know the
Yeah.
business, it's
But it's exciting to be see the possibility.
well, I mean, it's people. The people he's talking to, they want to create their own world. They're special effects houses, and
Hmm.
they just want a whole world that they can own and create
Yeah.
to have adventures in. So they say, well, this sounds like a great fit. So whether it goes any further than that, we'll
It
find
takes a
out. So I've had to sort of take a back set to
yeah.
to do those script jobs.
It takes a lot of really good writing though to create a world that they could envision themselves playing with, you know what I'm saying? If it was just a cookie cutter fantasy world, then it wouldn't be embraced. But if they really see that
Well,
they can make something out
that
of it.
that would be right if they'd actually read the books before they said it. They have. They're just talking to my producer, and
Yeah.
he says, "What are you looking for?" And they say, "We really want a world. that we can build because we got these amazing studios, which
Yeah.
they do have in the UK, and great designers. And so we really want a big overarching fantasy world of some sort.
Hmm.
And so he told them about it. They said, "Well, this sounds absolutely right up our alley." So they happen to be looking for. I mean, by now they could have read it and think this is awful rubbish. I'm not going to do this one, but I hope not.
Right.
Um, you know, but
Yeah.
I've been a script writer for 40 years in stage and film and TV and all that, and so I know that there's all sorts of projects that fly around, and some happen and many don't. But it's
Yeah.
nice to be well,
But
sold the rights anyway.
yeah, and then I wanted to ask you about that. How's that transition going from that to writing your own novel like this? Is there some parallels that you're able to pull, something you've learned from your script writing days that you pulled into this?
Yeah, absolutely. The most important thing I've learned was it's the hardest thing for any writer. I've been told by other writers
Hmm.
and writing teachers I've studied with since coming to Los Angeles, which is story structure. And I was shocked when I got here to LA. In the old days in Hollywood, people used to talk about, well, we'll write the scenario and then we'll add the dialogue. Like, what? Because
Yeah.
having written stage plays in England, some adaptations of classics or other things, the dialogue is the play. There's nothing else
Right.
that you hand into the director or the actors. Here's your script, and then you have to fill in the gaps between the dialogue with the action, or not fill it in, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Illuminate it all and bring it to be a whole piece.
Yeah. Connected.
The idea of writing the scenario and then adding dialogue was utterly strange. But if you think about movies were originally moving pictures. They only became talking pictures after they'd been around for 20 odd years.
Hmm.
And actually, that's when script writing took a big step backwards because they turned into very talkative people standing in one room yakking at each other instead of the genius of like a Buster Keaton and people like that
Yeah.
with all those incredible action with the
Yeah.
stories told in action. So I learnt a lot from my script writing career. So when I came to doing the books, I've always wanted to write books. I've written a few narrative nonfiction books, but I've always wanted to tell stories. And when I was talking with my editor right at the very beginning, when they signed me up, Kasich, the publisher, um, I said, it's so nice to be working, to be telling a story instead of showing it. And she said, no, you're not. I said, what? And then she sort of it really opened the book at one page, or we weren't zooming. She said, look at page 192 or something. So I looked at that. She said, this is a great scene. Now don't tell me, show me. And I go, I see what you mean. I'm actually just narrating the scene. I bring it alive, make it
Yeah.
happen. She said, that's a great scene. Now bring it to life. And this happened quite a lot in the first book because I was still kind of learning the craft of narrative rather than screenwriting or playwriting or I've written operas, a dozen operas, libretti,
Hmm.
um, and so all different forms of writing they feed into each other.
Yeah.
But what I haven't had from her yet, and I hope this isn't a hostage to fortune with the third book, but there's never been any problems with the story structure because I've learned over the years, as I said, from my colleagues and from my experience, the hardest thing to learn, which is good story structure. And, for example, book three, which we're just about to complete the developmental edit on, I mean, really, that twisted my brain. I was going out to the backyard, like every month, looking up at the moon, who's actually kind of an important or symbolic figure,
Hmm.
turns up. And it just seemed to be another full moon, another month had gone. I still hadn't cracked it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you finished it, so I had to write a lot of things that went up blind alleys, throw them away, do other
Right.
things, pare it all down. And when I finished it, looking back, I say, oh, well, of course, that's obvious.
Yeah.
So
It
then you
has
have
to
to
be
go
said.
back and fix the mysterious poem that is the clue. You have to go back and change that. And then, so it's rocking backwards and forwards. And the advantage of writing a series before any of it's published is that you can go back and lay pipe that
Yeah.
pays off in later books, which we have done. There's some clues that you won't even notice in even the first chapter of the first book
Yeah.
that pay off in
Wonderful.
book three and book four. And that was the luxury of being able to do it that way.
Hmm.
So
I like how The way you're describing going back to your backyard to see that full moon, it's almost like the moon was checking in on you. Hey, how's the
Yeah,
progress
absolutely.
going?
I'm going, because I keep my beer fridge in the garden.
Yeah.
You know you've arrived when you've got a beer fridge. So I got there's a fridge for the food in the kitchen, and there's one
Yeah.
out the back with a small one with
Yeah.
occasionally some beer left in it. And that's why I drink beer at night and write, just sit
Yeah.
here, have a good time relaxing. And yeah, so I see the moon. Oh, you're back again. Why haven't you given me the answer? It's
Yeah.
because
Come with some
because
notes next time.
yeah, because nobody's ever written your book before you have. It's
Yeah.
not like, I mean, adapting plays from one language to another or adapting a book for a film or TV, which I've done a lot of.
Hmm.
That's one thing. You've got your source material. But writing your own play or script from start, it's nobody's written that. Writing a book is the same. You're making it up.
Yeah.
And you've got to be aware that you can really, you can go round and round the houses before you figure out, okay, we just cut that, cut that, cut that. That's your answer. No, it's over there. It's a construction thing.
And then with your character like Dax, who's growing over time throughout your books, is there ever a time where you feel like Dax is telling you which way he wants to go or they want to go? Where in your characters where you feel like, well, it just doesn't make sense that like say this character would go this way. And so you kind of change your story or follow the story of what the character that you've built and has their own personality at this point, which way they would go naturally.
Kinda, but yes, kind of. But I've done a lot of script editing, and
Hmm.
sometimes when you're working with a new writer, you might come across a situation where you say, "Well, why is this bit in the script?" And they might say, "Well, I like it," and you have to point out tactfully that well, the script doesn't like it. You may like it, but it doesn't belong in this story, so put it in another story if you like it. But
Yeah.
so you have to sort of prize. This happened to me right at the beginning as well. You have to learn how to get out of your own way. You have to learn to have, you're part of a team when you're writing scripts.
Yeah.
And, the directors has got their input and the producers have their input. And sometimes the actors have their input. Well, it's usually quite late. So they might have input on the dialogue, which they would like to change, which is
Hmm.
fine with me. I don't mind if they come up with a better one. But, everyone, we're all working together
Yeah.
to make the thing as good as it can be. Um, uh, does that answer it? I think
It
so.
does, yeah. It's interesting to hear, it's such a long writing process, and when you're approaching these works and they're getting longer and longer, how are you maintaining the core principle of your books? Like, do you feel like you ever get to the point where the adventure's getting too grand for even your reader?
No, I think the bigger the better in
Yeah,
many ways because, obviously your heroes have got to be far less powerful and capable than your villains.
which is tricky
And then
sometimes.
when you've done the one with the villain there are two villains in book two actually,
Hmm.
both massively more powerful than our bedraggled bunch of exhausted, weary people staggering from place to place, trying to get things done. But good-hearted heroes.
Yeah,
Once you've done the bigger the hero, the villains get, then what do you do next book?
bigger
Well,
villain.
what it do in the fourth book, it really comes down to a very, very tiny personal problem
Mm,
between our hero and the threat, who's
yeah,
an absolutely nasty little shit. And she is implacable and she's gonna punish him. So it's
yeah,
not like massive great armies or whatever. It's
hmm,
just her. I'm gonna do you,
yeah,
and there's nothing you can do about it. Which so you try and change the scale a bit because you can't keep repeating the same.
right.
The trick is to do the same but different.
Hmm.
If if supposing the third book of Lord of the Rings had been set on Mars, you'd go, what?
Yeah,
You want it to be in the same world, and that's also really all one story.
yeah,
But if sequels appear in a fantasy world, that fantasy world's got to be true to itself. Like if you're in a video game and you go from one realm to the next realm, which is usually a higher level,
yeah.
it's all got to have a consistency, even if it's new. So it's the same but different always.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. If we're returning to Lord of the Rings as an example, if you're fighting at Helm's Deep and the Nexus Minas Tirith, it's just bigger, but it boils down to one-on-one conversations, one-on-one battles. The setting or the environment might be bigger, but you're still boiling down to your hero, embracing courage, embracing their bravery
And
to
with
win
the
the day.
problem.
Yeah.
And what Tolkien realized and very wisely did at the end of, I think it's the end of book one, isn't it? That he splits up the nine
Yeah.
So the nine are heading together, and then they're apart, which is great
Hmm.
because then how you construct a film script is you cut between A story and B story.
Yeah.
That aligns time so they can rattle on. In book two, our four heroes go off in four different directions. So the book, instead of being all first person narrated, is first person and third person. So when the
Oh, wow.
hero's having his chapters, first person, when the others are having their chapters, it's third person. And that's it holds together okay, thanks to my editor. But that's how you construct screenplays. You do cut between uh, plots and subplots, and that makes a story rattle along.
Yeah. It seems almost like just as an outside observer talking to you, it sounds like Richard that you have like a director's mind that you think of things in shots and in scenes, and I think that might make your books seem more cinematic and maybe even easier to read for a modern audience.
Well, I do. Again, I've directed a number of things,
Yeah.
from operas at the Los Angeles Opera to uh, TV and stuff, and stage plays. So it's second string to my bow. I wouldn't really call myself a writer director hyphenate because I haven't had the big track record of directing.
Yeah.
But I've certainly done enough to know. I went to class here at Beverly Hills Playhouse for 4 years, studying under Milton Katsalis, who founded the program,
Hmm.
and that was the master class, and that was very demanding, and I learned a great deal
Yeah.
about how to work with actors. One of the things Milton always said was, a lot of directors don't know how to direct actors. They're too busy setting up shots and doing other things, and
Hmm.
the actors have to learn how to direct themselves. And there were Oscar-winning actors in the room.
Yeah.
This is the master class, so you'd be sitting next to somebody, and then they put their scenes up, and Milton would critique them for an hour. Jeffrey Tambor was in class. He was also one of
Oh,
the
wow.
teachers for a while, and he was a brilliant teacher. And his career began to blossom about the time that I joined the class. And he's, obviously gone on to have a great career as an actor, but he's an incredible teacher.
Hmm.
And the stuff that they would see in the scenes that I was and that what they would see in the performance and the acting and the interpretation is just way deeper than my pay grade. So those people were able to teach me a huge amount. So when it came time to, for example, direct an opera at the Los Angeles Opera that Placido Domingo conducted, big budget production, a chorus of 40 people, uh, how many were the lead singers were six, and they all coming from all over the world, and it's a new piece, so they have to learn it. I was prepared
Yeah.
because I knew how to handle that, and I would give more credit to my 4 years at Beverly Hills Playhouse, I think, to any actual real directing I'd done before, just to get to that level of absolute confidence in what you've got. And the important thing for any director is to prepare.
Hmm.
Prepare and run a happy ship. Anyone can do that. But if you don't prepare, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I
Yeah.
understand why people get grumpy on the sets because people are exhausted, and directors quite often get pulled in off different directions by different people needing different things,
Yeah.
and there are all sorts of reasons why it can be a tiring or difficult experience. On some, not all, not I've been on some shoots where 90% of it is a breeze, and only 10% of it is like, we're losing the light here. Can we
Yeah.
get on
Stress, stress,
with it?
stress.
That rain cloud's coming.
Yeah.
Get the hell on, which is
Yeah, it could be that way, of course. But like you're saying earlier, you like that balancing the many plates and stuff like that. So I think it was something that you brought back into your fantasy world where our adventurers have so many different directions they're spread off into, and that's something that I think you thrive in, right?
I do. The important thing, I've always loved learning. So
Hmm.
when I started working with Leslie Robin, my editor, and she did that whole thing about, no, you're not telling me a story, you're showing me a story as well as telling me. And you go, that was a lesson right there. And
Yeah,
and so she hasn't had to do that in the second book. In the third book, I haven't had her notes yet, but I think I might be getting them tomorrow or the next day.
here we
But
go.
there you go. Well, we've still got a few months to do the audiobook
Yeah,
and get it out into the world.
that's
But it's,
exciting.
you just learn from good people.
Yeah.
You can't think you know everything to start off with. That's just nuts. I mean, I've got stories about my early days where my first scripts and the first script meetings, and how. just simply difficult. You find it when someone opens a page of the script and it's covered in blue ink, things circled and stuff. And this was a wonderful director in England for a series I wrote. You say, it's really good, fantastic, Richard. This is great. Now let's do your notes. So, really lovely things. And then opens the page and it's a sea of blue ink.
Yeah.
And you feel you've been disemboweled by an emu. You go, ah. But so you know not to say anything and you learn and then you take it away, take it away, do the fixes. And
Hmm.
then when I brought back the script to him, there were like 3 notes in the second draft.
Yeah.
And then he gave me the rest of the series to write. But
Hmm.
if I'd resisted the notes, I wouldn't have got the gig in the first place.
Must be
Well,
hard to
I
still,
would, but
yeah, but it must be hard to still show your voice through those blue notes to make sure that
yeah,
the
well, you just
initial
got to
build was there.
learn. There are
Yeah.
two things that are important in this. One is he's on your side. He's trying to make a good show.
Okay.
He's got a series. These were well-known, very successful children's books, and so it's going to be a big budget production. They all wanted it to do well. There were going to be well-known actors in it, all that. And I was 26 or 7 and new, and he would
Hmm.
be the only London producer in London that my agent said he'll give you a chance. Go along and take the meeting. So one thing led successfully to another, um, and you just learn. You just
Yeah.
get out of your own way, get on with the team, and it stops hurting after it. Imagine being an actor and you go to an audition. It's I don't like you. It's the whole person. If it's I don't
Yeah.
like your script, well, that's bad enough. We've all
Right.
written scripts that have sent in and people have rejected. So no, it's not for us. And you go, well, you just growl and think, you fool, you don't realize.
Yeah.
But an actor at an audition,
Yeah.
their whole person's rejected, and it's so tough on actors because an actor has to be really sensitive to the words and the part
Hmm.
and what's needed from them. Yeah, but they got to be as tough as old boots to survive in that business and not go nuts with these. Imagine going to a
Yeah.
room full of
Yeah.
20
You're going
people who
to a
look just
room
like you.
to just, yeah, be judged amongst your peers, and you can't see the flaws in you and the perfections in the person they did pick, you know?
Right, and your agent calls you up and says, we've got a call for a bearded gaming geek of about whatever age you are. And
Yeah.
you go into the room and everybody looks like you.
Yeah. And there's a lot of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I've actually done some, uh, I had a protege a few years ago, as
Hmm.
a young actress who wanted to get into drama school. So we worked on scenes and stuff that she hadn't done before, like cold reading and all that sort of stuff. And she said once she got into her drama school, which was great because it was very competitive. And then she started going to auditions. She'd say, I go to a room and there are 30 other blondes of my age. And
Yeah.
go, well, I told you, didn't I? But anyway, she's doing well.
That's
Uh,
good. Yeah. Befriend
yeah.
them. They're going to be your competitors in the future.
Oh, yeah, I suppose so. But well, actually, it's so cutthroat. It's so tough on women as well. There's so
Oh,
many
yeah.
fewer parts. Uh, um, you've got to really have a lot of toughness as well as
Yeah.
the goods to survive.
That's the other thing, like you're saying with your script being denied versus being an actor, is you have to earn that iron hide to be able to survive those rejections, to be able to survive in that acting field at all. And yeah, props to them who can make it. It's amazing.
I mean, I really admire actors a lot.
Yeah.
uh, how they put up with it, I don't know. So,
Hmm.
they other writers have said this. Uh, you have no idea of the amount of times actors save our backsides. You know,
Yeah.
they make our mediocre scripts really hum.
Yeah, they give it some life that
And
that might
I'm
not be there.
astonished to hear that from really, really well-known script writers
Hmm.
saying that. And they go, wow, so kudos to the actors.
Yeah.
They deserve all the success they get if they get any.
Yeah, if they get any, which is
Unless
difficult
they're
in this
idiots,
case.
of course, because there are
There's
plenty
a
in
few of
that.
those.
Look, but that's the other nice thing about being a writer is you hear all the scuttlebutt. You're in the loop. You've done the script. You're in at the beginning. You
Yeah.
hear all the stuff, so you know who you really don't want to work with her.
Yeah.
This one has the mother or sister from hell who comes to the set all the time. What are you thinking about? Don't even put her on the list. And you go, bloody hell. And or or that. Oh God, I mean, I couldn't possibly begin to tell you some of the horror stories
All the drama
because
behind the dramas.
I mean, oh God, one guy. I see if I can do this without telling his name. So he got to the set, which was overseas. So which one's the director? say, oh, come here, that kind of attitude.
Oh
Right,
goodness,
I just want, all right, I don't take notes. All right.
that's the director's job.
Uh, uh, when you go, A, how fucking stupid,
Yeah,
because notes are going to help you.
of course.
And B, how sort of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Short-sighted.
Hmm.
Because, and there was one scene where the producer told me where he was against a really good actor. It was a double scene, two actors, just two men. And this other guy, he could see he was really kicking his ass in the scene. So he brought himself up to the level that we knew he could be
Yeah.
and delivered a great scene.
Mm.
But the rest of the time, he was just sort of sleepwalking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just getting his paycheck.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's just such a crazy attitude.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but everyone's different. I mean,
It's a collaborative effort too, and to not see that, to think that it's all on you. There's a bunch of people around you that made this project happen. So don't negate
I
them.
think he's probably bitter and disappointed and felt he was slumming it.
Yeah.
I simply don't know, but
Mm.
there's so many horror stories I can tell you about
Yeah.
directors, actors, and it's not necessary.
Yeah. It's not.
Sometimes
You gotta work with others, and to not work with them is, I mean, that's like not to just return it back to your book here, New Rock and Roll, but again, it's all about the adventurers working together, or else evil wins the day.
that's true. I mean, they do rely on each other.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of writing a group story,
Yeah.
is you can see them all interface. And also, the other thing that's happened is that the more they get to know each other, the more they can prank each other.
Hmm.
So there's at least one set piece in book four where they just play. I mean, two of them just play two others with a beautiful prank that just
Yeah.
literally backfires. And I won't go further than to say that in their faces. Um, so those are fun when they come up because it lends humanity to the characters.
Yeah.
There was one bit in book three, a big set piece scene, which I knew that when they got to this area, there would be this problem
Hmm.
with the ogres. In order to get past that, they got to do something nuts, which is a big set piece scene.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't wait to write it. So I wrote it about 10 chapters before I got there. And then by the time I got there, it was just all just there ready to be edited. So, if you get really an exciting set piece idea like that, just write it as soon as you can, because it's the times when you're not writing that hurt.
Yeah.
When you're going, what am I doing wrong here? Why did I go up that blind alley? And I'm sort of twiddling my thumbs now. I've finished the series, which is annoying because I like writing. I
Yeah.
think
What's
I
next?
don't want to repeat what I've done before. I don't want to repeat the effects. I do want to do so. I love the world that I'm in. What can I say? I think possibly short stories involving two of the scoundrels who they meet on the way
That'd be
could be
wonderful. Yeah.
some fun. Well, we'll see.
We'll see. When you
Yeah.
build that set piece that you set out for yourself 10 chapters ahead, do you feel like is that just exciting to reach it, or do you might force the story to fit there? Is that harder to make sure that the story works there? And once you get there, do you change that set piece a little bit to make sense
Oh
with
yeah,
the story that you made?
you always change. I mean, rewrites are
Okay.
where you get the gold. But
Oh, that's
that was
nice.
a set piece scene. They had to do this in order to get. So they were obviously going to go there. The
Hmm.
set piece happens. Then they go on if they can get this set piece achieved,
Yeah.
which looks very unlikely because they're hopelessly unprepared for it. They're way out of their depth. They're being marmalized by by these ogres in this event, and they got to figure out. So one of them's got. So a solution needs to be found, and then they can move on. So those sort of scenes are relatively easy to write in, not in a vacuum, but sort of in isolation.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you had like a battle scene
Yeah.
somewhere, you knew you were coming to a battle scene. Uh, I haven't done this, but you could probably write a bit of it beforehand because it's an event that you go through rather than something that you have to come to organically. And of course, you're always doing your outlines. In that you know, there's this whole idea of do you fly by the seat of your pants an author, or do you plot in advance? I do both. So
Yeah.
the stories I tend to write kind of going forwards, vaguely knowing where I'm going, and then I'm always keep creating or assembling an outline on the side with like 2 or 3 lines per chapter about what's happening in this chapter. So quite often the outline would be the first 20 chapters are done, and then there's a bit here with there's some blanks there, and then chapter 27's got some lines in it to show what happens there. I think there's another chapter here. I don't know what number it'll be, but that's got to happen here, and it's got to end there because that's you have to know your ending.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
first thing to do with any stories, work out your ending, because if you don't know where you're going, well, you're in the same boat as your readers.
Right.
That's so then you're really uh, depending on a lot, good deal of luck to get there.
Yeah.
Even when you do get there, you rewrite it. You go back and you set it up and pay it off.
Right. Yeah, and then like you're saying, the rewrites are where the gold's at. That's when you're going to find out if the ending was worth it or not, and if it needs to be something different, or at
Well, if
least
the ending isn't
changed.
worth it, you just don't write the book. I,
Yeah.
when I got the idea for New Rock, New World, I said, I can't wait to write this. How does it end? That was the first thing.
Mm.
What's the explanation for this? Because there has to be one.
Right.
And then people are writing in and saying, I didn't see that coming. I really enjoy that. Did not see that coming. Can't wait for the next book. So it's I say that just to say that you have to do that because then you've got somewhere to aim for. Of course, you tell your audience you're going over there. Look at that sparklies and red herrings and
Yeah.
confusions. And then when they get to the end, they go, "Oh yeah, of course,
You're the
you,
illusionist the entire time.
you got me. You got me." An audience love being,
Yeah.
"Oh, you got me."
Yeah.
It's
Well, Richard, this sounds like such a beautiful world that people need to be diving into. Your next book is going to be out on October 31st, which I think gives everybody plenty of time. They're both the first two books, New Rock, New Roll, and New Rock, New Realm. They're about 500 pages each, so you guys can get into both these books before the new book comes out October 31st, as of right now.
and you may not have noticed, but Role is spelled Role, New
Yeah.
Rock, and a rock is a planet, new third rock from the sun.
Hmm.
So they're somewhere else, and they're playing. They are these new roles in their
New
lives.
Rolls.
So it's a
As a
bit of
video gamer, I was like, oh, I know what that means.
a. Yeah, well, you're coming from the same love of gaming that I have.
Yeah.
But the odd thing is, I haven't played any games recently. I
Sounds like
just,
you've been too busy,
I'm,
frankly.
I've sort of like it's as if I come through them.
Yeah.
I could never have written these books without the great games that developers and designers have created for us in the last couple of decades.
Yeah.
The idea wouldn't have happened.
Hmm.
But when it did, it's as if I've been through this like years and years of gaming.
Yeah.
And now I came out the other side and I'm writing using the book form.
Yeah.
It's been
Sharing the
such a nice,
stories.
it's
Yeah.
been a journey.
Yeah. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to make sure everybody follows in the description. We have richardsparks.com. Guys, pick up your copies of both these books and get ready for that third book. Richard, I would love to be able to talk to you again in the future when we talk more about this third book as it's about to release. That would be really
Sure, I
nice.
would love to come back and once you read the first
Yes.
three books, perhaps.
I will definitely be cracking those books open. I'm excited to get on this adventure with our readers, with our listeners.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, links in the description. Follow up on that, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.